Well, hello, happy Friday to you. If you're watching these devotionals on the day when they are produced, it is Friday. Congratulations making it this far in the week. Though, if you're like me in these pandemic times, you can't even figure out what day of the week it is anymore. You know, my days of the week primarily are defined by whether there's church on Sunday. Well, some Sundays I'm not even on campus. I'm sitting in my living room watching church on my computer or TV, so I can't figure out what day of the week it is, or my days of the week are defined by whether my kids are in school or not. They would have almost been back at school, but of course they're never on campus anymore, and so I can't even figure out what day of the week it is. So just congratulations for watching this and for joining us. We are in a series of devotionals this week. They're all focused on prayer. This passage that I'm going to read today, that we're going to read together, I think is fascinating. If you go back and you watch the earlier ones this week, what you'll see is that I was really working from some of the inspiration of Saint Teresa of Avila, a 16th century Spanish nun who began a life that was dedicated to prayer, and that life really grew into a voice of teaching and reform and a prophetic voice in the church. But it began in prayer, and out of her prayer life grew a deeper spirituality and a clear voice of God. And so that's really intriguing to me, and I've been reading some of her stuff, so I wanted to focus on prayer. So Gospel of Mark today, Gospel of Mark chapter 9. I'll give you a second to find that. Gospel of Mark chapter 9. A little bit longer of a passage today. I'm going to start reading in verse 14. Mark 9:14. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them and some scribes arguing with them. When the whole crowd saw him, they were immediately overcome with awe, and they ran forward to greet him. He asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so." Now we're going to read some more, but I just want to stop along the way and make sure we know what's happening here. And so the disciples have been out ministering, and someone has brought their sick son who's possessed by some kind of demon, and the disciples were trying to cast it out, and the father is reporting to Jesus that the disciples were unable to do so. They were unsuccessful. Jesus answered them. Now it's not clear to me who he answered at this point. Was he answering the man? Was he answering the crowd? Was he answering his disciples? He answered them, "You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me." Was Jesus frustrated? I mean, clearly these are not happy words from Jesus. Was he frustrated with his disciples? Are they the faithless generation that they weren't able to cast him out? Is Jesus frustrated at the people who were there watching, or the family of this boy who's possessed? Are they the faithless generation? And they brought the boy to him. When the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you are able," did you hear the man? If you're able to do anything, and Jesus says, "If you are able," as if all things can be done for the one who believes, says Jesus. And immediately the father of the child cried out, "I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." After crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand. When he entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" He said to them, "This kind can only come out through prayer." This kind can only come out through prayer. Now, fascinating passage here, that there are multiple, as I stopped along the way, sort of multiple stops that we can take, multiple questions that we can ask that are not clear. Who was Jesus angry at? Who needed to have more faith? Was it the disciples who needed to have more faith? Was it the Father who needed to have more faith? Remember another passage in the gospel where a leader comes to him and says, "My servant is sick, and heal him, but you don't need to go to the house. You only need to say the word, and I know that he will be healed." So that man, he had such faith that Jesus, no matter where the sick servant was, that Jesus needed to only say the word, and the servant would have been healed. That kind of faith. So was Jesus frustrated that the Father didn't have that kind of faith? Was it a lack of faith from the disciples that led to the boy not being healed? Or was it a lack of faith from the Father and the family that led to the disciples' failure to be able to heal him? And you see that Jesus says to the Father, "All things can be done for the one who believes." And I love the Father's response. I think this often could be our response. "I believe, help my unbelief." God, I believe... God, I believe that issues like war and poverty and racism in our world can be solved. I believe that a pandemic can be healed, mostly, but there's still parts where I'm not sure. There's still parts where I don't believe quite enough. I believe that you are powerful enough to do it, but help those parts of me, God, that still don't believe enough, that would actually see it happen or see it come true. And Jesus says these things only come out by prayer. What's unclear to me is whether it was Jesus who needed to pray or the Father who needed to pray. Whether it was the disciples who lacked the prayer, or whether it was the boy who is being convulsed by the demons and his corresponding family who lacked the prayer. And if you read biblical commentaries, they'll come out on every side of all of these questions. It's really uncertain, though there is one certainty, and that is that somebody needs to pray some more. And of course, prayer is the place of our primary connection with God. That if you want to see the miracle, if you want to see the healing, if you want to see the wholeness in the world, that the best way to see that is to be more clearly and closely connected to God. May that be the goal of this day for each of us. God bless.